This is Thaddeus Botgore, session 9658, recorded 2024. Patient ID 9658. Name Peter. Sex male. Case file viral. Notes. Peter, a man in his early 20s, shows signs of aggression and lack of sympathy for those around him. He has agreed to meet with me today to discuss the events surrounding an incident with his brother in an attempt to become a viral sensation. Below is our conversation. Transcribed by the late Reese Parker. Viral. Narrated by Lorne Bronstein. The internet is a big place. They say 4.13 billion users have access to an internet connection. That's more than half the world. Now, we didn't always have the internet. I can't imagine a time when that were true, but my father told me about those dark ages. Search engines have been like a father to me. I've relied on the internet to complete reports and prove my friends wrong when they knew with absolute certainty that Napoleon was short. He wasn't. He was 5'6". That's taller than average for French at the time. How my dad lived most of his life without access to this information? I'll never know. If I were him, I'd personally feel robbed. To live a life without knowledge of the name of that plastic piece that sits on the ends of your shoelace, they're called aglets, for most of your life, sounds like a hellish nightmare. But according to Google, some dead guy named Thomas Gray said, ignorance is bliss. Before websites where you could post pictures of your dying grandmother existed, stories were told by word of mouth. I remember my dad telling me a story from when he was a kid. The story goes a little something like this. Brandon Alec was out with his best friend and his friend's family on a camping trip. Sometime during the middle of the day, Brandon and his friend decided to go for a hike. Brandon, camping for the first time, relied on his friend's knowledge to conquer the rugged terrain. Now, at some point, Brandon turned around and realized he was alone. Out of sheer panic, he kept running without knowledge of where he was going. Now, the legend says it took 3 days to find Brandon, and when they finally did find him, they said he was huddled in a log, covered in his own shit. My dad said he went mad from fear. Fuck. Imagine how viral something like that would have gone. Some people have all the luck. To this day, Brandon is in a psych ward somewhere. I tried to find his contact info in hopes of interviewing him, but hospitals for the mentally insane are surprisingly private with their patient records. Okay, so enough about kids getting lost in the woods. You want to know why I'm here. So it was 9 years ago on December 12th. My parents came home, and to my surprise, they held the baby in their hands. The baby had a soft head and 2 weird, different colored eyes. This is a condition we now know as heterochromia. Like the start of a freak show, Jack's different colored eyes quickly became the talk of our small town. Now, you have to understand that not much goes on in our small town. We have a population of 1,500 on a good day. Everybody knows your business. My family was rather private, so we spent most of our time inside, where prying eyes couldn't see. As a result of our reclusion, Jack and I mostly grew up on the internet. At first, we discovered games like Minesweeper and Pinball, but we quickly grew bored of that. It was shortly thereafter we discovered a website dedicated to posting videos of yourself. This website was great. People shared windows into their personal lives. And you have to understand, for Jack and I, it was a way for us to go out of the house without actually going anywhere. My mom grew up on the East Coast and only experienced summer a few months out of the year. In an attempt to vicariously live through us, she would insist. She would demand that we play outside. I don't know your knowledge of summers in Arizona, but Christ, the average summer day it's hot enough to cook your skin like a roasted ham. You could smell the burning flesh as the searing warmth slowly baked your top layer of skin a savory golden brown. In an attempt to avoid the scorching heat, we would often visit our friend down the road, Jacob Backbore. Jacob was a mild-mannered kid. Both his parents were doctors and raised him with the paranoid delusions that everything could kill him. Typical for a Jewish mother. She meant well, but she did put the fear of God into him. Jacob was taller than most kids on the block. He had a big nose and wiry, curly, untamable hair he would call his Jufro. He was the only Jewish person we knew, but my parents thought it was important. We learned about culture not our own, as they said. So they let us spend as much time at his house as we wanted. As the old adage goes, is it adage? Is that the right word? Well, I guess it doesn't matter. What they didn't know can't kill him. What they didn't know can't hurt him? What they didn't know was that his parents were never home. You see, both his parents were surgeons, and were often on call at the hospital across town. With Jacob in charge of himself, we would look at his house as a mini vacation. When we visited, we would spend most of our time searching for prank videos. Really, we could do whatever we wanted. I remember this one guy who would step out of the bushes with mangled clothing and a bent bike, claiming he was just hit by a car. The drivers that helped him would be horrified by his injuries, only for that horror to turn into anger when they realized it was all a joke. The drivers may not have liked it, but we loved it. Oh, and there was this other guy who would pretend to carry a baby, only to slip and let it fall, hitting the hard concrete of a busy city street. Oh my god. People would drop their coffee, let go of their dogs and laptops in an attempt to catch this child before it met its demise. When they realized it was a toy, the look on their face was fucking priceless. Ugh, we always spoke about making a prank video, but we just never knew what it would be about. Chapter 2. The Idea. It was a hot day when they left me in charge. This was the first time I was alone with Jack. I remember like it was yesterday. It was a nice day that they trusted me enough, and Jack and I planned our day as they were heading out the door. They left money on the counter to order pizza. Extra sauce and mushrooms were Jack's favorite. Shortly after my parents left, we relished in the idea of freedom. Out of pure excitement and maybe childhood ignorance, we started jumping on the couches. Ugh, the cheap springs of those old couches recoiled and released, lifting us to what felt like 100 feet in the air at the time. It only lasted a few minutes before we got bored and decided to eat ice cream and watch cartoons. By 11 in the afternoon, we were bored of the cartoons and decided to watch prank videos. We watched a video of kids filling balloons full of mayonnaise and throwing them at unsuspecting cars in the freeway. It was pretty hilarious. One car almost crashed into those concrete barriers they put up to stop drunk drivers from swerving into the forest. Oh man. But of all the videos we watched, my favorite was from the channel called Chaotic Good. Now this guy was one of the most popular prank videos on the internet. One time he went into a public bathroom at a local coffee shop and poured concrete down the toilet. An hour later, the entire store was up to their ankles in toilet water. God, they said the damage was so bad, they had to close the store and relocate down the street just to get rid of the smell of shit. One day, I hope to be as funny as him. That's when I had an idea. Let's start a channel and make a prank video. If it's good enough, we'll even go viral. Our first video, though, it had to be something good, something you cannot help but share. Need a tablespoon of cinnamon? No, it's not funny enough. Pour ice water on my sleeping brother. Nah, it's too boring. It's hard to think creatively when you've been raised in a bubble your entire life. My mother's a health nut, the kind where everything causes cancer. You have to understand, like, having soda in the house was a luxury reserved for Christmas. Most men hide pornography or a mistress, but my dad was different. My dad's love affair wasn't with a person, but sweets. My mom didn't know about it at the time, but my dad kept a secret stash of sweets in his office. Let me rephrase that. My dad's collection of candies, gummies, chocolates, and soda was enough to put Willy Wonka in a diabetic coma. He didn't know it, but once in a while I'd sneak a bottle or two of soda. I'll never forget the first time I tried soda. The bubbles, they danced on my tongue like an explosion of 1,000 little fireworks. Ugh, it was ecstasy in a little glass bottle. Ever since that first hit, I've been hooked. At the time, Jack didn't know about the man cave, but that day felt like the perfect opportunity to pass the torch. I brought him downstairs where my dad's home office was. Normally, we weren't allowed in there, without his supervision, of course, but what he didn't know can't hurt him. And as some dead guy named Thomas Gray once said, ignorance is bliss. My parents must have trained Jack well because, like an obedient dog, Jack stood at the cherrywood threshold, too scared to pass through. I grabbed 2 bottles of that liquid bliss from my dad's hidden mini fridge and we made our way back upstairs. We talked more about ideas for a video, and That's when we came across a genre known as viral challenges. You probably heard of them. People do dares and upload it online. After they complete the dare, they challenge their friends to do it. Sort of like a chain reaction kind of thing. We watched one where a boy fills his bathtub with water and holds his head underwater until he passes out. There was another where a man would smack a stranger in the middle of the street and run away. They're so funny. As we scrolled over a list of videos, Jack noticed a thumbnail of a bottle of soda exploding like a volcano. We clicked it out of curiosity, and as it turns out, if you mix soda and Mentos, a chemical reaction happens that causes the soda to erupt in a violent explosion. And we're not talking shaking a bottle and opening it. I mean cover your parents' imported Persian rug and drapes in a mint-flavored soda kind of explosion. Jack was excited to try it. I didn't know for certain, but there was a good chance our dad had Mentos amongst his treasure trove of diabetic delights. I headed back downstairs into his office in hopes of finding those disgusting mint-flavored candies generally reserved for grandmothers and smokers. And ta-da! Under a pile of half-eaten Snickers and a melted Hershey bar was an unopened package of Mentos. Now, my next dilemma. I can take the package, and we can make the video, but then Dad would know I opened it, and my secret sugar-filled oasis comes to a crashing halt. Without hesitation, I took the whole package. Such is the cost of going viral. We set the camera up in the living room. I was too short at the time to reach the mantel, so we piled old copies of Time magazine and those National Geographics. You know, the ones with the African tribes with the plates in their lips? We piled them on the coffee table to get the camera positioned high enough for us. Jack sat on the couch while I adjusted the camera to assure we both fit in the frame. I hit record and rushed over to the couch to sit next to Jack. "Hi, I'm Peter, and this is my little brother Jack." Jack waved at the camera as if someone was watching. Looking back, I don't think he fully understood what we were doing, but that's okay. I could carry the load. I looked at the camera and with a big smile said, "We're about to do the Mentos Challenge." I was so excited I could barely speak. Everything led up to this moment. We'll look back at this years from now, after we're viral celebrities like Chaotic Good, and remember how it all started. I handed Jack a Mentos. That's when I had the great idea. I nudged Jack and said, "What if instead of putting it in the bottle, we ate the Mentos and drank the Coke?" He shrugged and without any hesitation put a handful in his mouth. God, I remember watching him chew a handful of Mentos. Did not look easy. He still had most of his baby teeth, and I could see him struggling to break the exterior egg-like shell. After a few minutes of chewing with mostly his front baby teeth, he swallowed them all. It'll probably come out of his nose, I thought. God, this has to go viral. I wasn't wrong. As I handed Jack the soda, his eyes lit up. You could see the pleasure in his face the moment that first drop hit his tongue. The sweetness overload is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Cherish it, kid. Soda will never taste this good again. Jack finished the whole bottle in minutes and let out a huge burp, so loud I thought the roof would cave in. We waited about 5 minutes and nothing really happened. We kept the camera rolling just in case. I remember Spielberg once, we watched a documentary where he said always have the camera rolling because it's moments that you turn off the camera that the best things happen. So I kept it going, but I didn't expect much. After another maybe 10 minutes of waiting, we kept it rolling, but we thought that was pretty much the end of our experiment. So we put on Looney Tunes, Jack's favorite. It was actually the episode where Wile E. Coyote would try to catch the Roadrunner. I always loved how confident Wile E. Coyote was until it was too late, and by that point, the whole thing would blow up in his face. Classic comedy. A few minutes into the show, Jack started complaining about a tummy ache. He could be such a baby at times, so I brushed it off. It was about a minute later or so, he started wincing and holding his stomach. I told him to go to the bathroom, but he said he couldn't get up. Ugh, he's such a baby. So I tried to help him up, and that's when he screamed. I'll never forget the blood-curdling primal, make the hair on the back of your neck stand up sound that came from this little 9-year-old boy. It was that moment when I noticed his stomach was big and round. Was it always this big, I thought to myself? Maybe he ate a little too much ice cream. I tried to get Jack to the bathroom, but every time I moved, he let out this hysterical scream reserved for those tortured at Guantanamo Bay. After several attempts, I finally was able to get him to go to the bathroom. He really looked like he was going to be sick. The only time he really stopped screaming was when he inhaled so we could gather enough precious oxygen to belt out another ear-shattering scream. I knew I needed to deal with this before my parents came home. I'm an adult. Adults don't call their parents. They handle things themselves. I told Jack to lean forward while sitting on the toilet with the hopes of pushing the gas along his digestive tract. At this point, he was so bloated he could barely bend over. His stomach looked like it was going to explode. That's when it happened. He blew chunks everywhere. In seconds, the entire bathroom was redecorated in bile and mint chocolate chip ice cream. So we had a lot to clean up. At least he'd be fine by the time Mom and Dad came home. My parents, they are obsessed with those nature documentaries. Every Sunday night as a family, we would sit in the living room and learn about the wonders nature has to offer. I remember learning about Yellowstone Park. They say Yellowstone sits on a giant volcano that's been dormant for millions of years, and as a result, Yellowstone contains more geysers and hot springs than any other place on the planet. There's actually one geyser that goes by the name Old Faithful. It got this name due to its shooting a hot stream of pressurized water every 35 to 120 minutes like clockwork. Every year, tourists gather in hopes to see the geyser erupt. Geologists claim Old Faithful erupts 17 times a day. Now that may seem like a lot, but at least the geyser has moments of respite. I wish my brother had that luxury. Since the vomiting started, he hasn't stopped. As he tried to talk, you could hear the pain as the bile from his stomach ate away at the lining of his esophagus. He's been throwing up for so long now. We're starting to see blood. The poor thing. The blood started as a small speck, but now it's a lot more and much thicker, almost like a blackberry jam. He's exhausted, and you can tell because he's so pale. He can barely speak or even keep his eyes open. He almost looks like he's falling asleep. I tried my best to hold him up so we could get most of the vomit in the toilet, but it's hard and there's blood everywhere. The stomach acid lined the floor, and I can't seem to get my footing without slipping. The smell of iron and bile is enough to make me want to vomit. I needed some fresh air, so I left him just for a minute to get more paper towel from the kitchen. That's when my parents came in. I'll spare you the details, but as it turns out, Mentos and soda explode with enough force to rupture every organ. The skin, however, has the elasticity to stretch to twice its normal size. Instead of your body swelling like a balloon, your organs swell until the pressure against the stomach wall is so hard the organs rupture, causing an organ and stomach stew to brew inside you like a human crock pot. The doctors said they've only seen internal damage of this extent in fatal motor vehicle accidents. The surgery alone cost my parents their home. The ridicule from the media cost them their jobs. People started throwing things at our house, leaving hateful messages at our door about how my parents are unfit to care for us. Some YouTube celebrities even came to our house to make videos on the incident. After everything that happened, I do have a lot of regrets, but I suppose the silver lining is we did go viral. This is Dr. Thaddeus Botgore, meeting with patient Peter, patient ID 9658, session 9658. Now, Peter, do you know why you're here today? Court order? Well, more than that, do you know why we're talking? Doc, it was over a decade ago. A day hasn't gone by that I haven't thought about it. And what have you learned from that experience? I guess if the cost of fame is a pound of flesh, better someone else's than your own?